Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been a dominant figure in Bangladesh's political landscape for decades. As the head of the Awami League party, she has ruled the country for 15 years, having been re-elected multiple times. Her leadership has been characterized by economic development but also by accusations of authoritarianism, corruption, and nepotism. Quota system for government jobs. One of the central issues sparking the recent protests is the quota system in government job allocations. This system reportedly favors those with connections to the ruling party, thereby marginalizing the general population, particularly the youth who have been protesting for more equitable job opportunities. The protests began as a student-led movement demanding the removal or reform of the quota system in government job recruitment. This is a significant issue in Bangladesh, where government jobs are highly coveted due to their stability and benefits. Initially peaceful, these protests reflected widespread discontent among the youth, who feel their future is being compromised by corruption and favoritism. Escalation into violence. The protests quickly escalated into violence as the government responded with force. The government's crackdown on student-led protests was severe, with deadly clashes leading to some of the worst bloodshed since Bangladesh's War of Independence in 1971. This use of force further fueled public outrage and widened the protests into a broader challenge against Hasina's long-standing rule. Thousands of demonstrators stormed government buildings, including Hasina's official residence, signaling a loss of control by the government. Public sentiment against the ruling party became increasingly hostile, with acts of vandalism and looting reported. Hasina's resignation and escape. Under immense pressure, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned and fled the country. Her departure was seen as a direct result of the mounting protests and the violent backlash from the government. Hasina's escape to India is notable given Bangladesh's historical and geopolitical ties with its neighbor, India. The fact that she fled there could indicate potential asylum or support, though it remains uncertain. The military, led by General Waqar Uz Zaman, stepped in to stabilize the situation. The general assured the nation that order would be restored and promised investigations into the violence, particularly the government's response to the protests. He also met with opposition leaders and civil society representatives to discuss forming an interim government, showing a move towards resolving the crisis through political means rather than further violence. The public's fury was evident as they ransacked properties associated with Hasina and her family, notably, the ancestral home of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the country's founding father, and Hasina's father, was targeted, indicating deep-seated resentment towards the ruling family. Major offices of pro-government TV stations were torched and taken off the air, highlighting a significant aspect of the protests, the fight for press freedom and unbiased information. This action reflects public frustration with state-controlled media narratives that many believe are manipulated to favor the ruling party. Hasina's government had already faced criticism from international entities, including the US and the UK, for human rights violations and curbing press freedoms. The situation further strained relations with Western nations, which have expressed concerns over the democratic backsliding in Bangladesh. Despite this, Hasina maintained strong diplomatic ties with regional powers like India and China, which have strategic interests in Bangladesh. The protests were fueled by the context of a contested election, where Hasina's re-election was marred by allegations of vote rigging and suppression of opposition voices. Thousands of opposition members were jailed prior to the elections, raising questions about the legitimacy of her government. The demonstrations reflect a broader dissatisfaction with the status quo, especially among the youth who see limited opportunities for advancement. High unemployment rates, coupled with corruption and nepotism, have exacerbated the situation, leading to a volatile social climate. Schools and universities were closed as the unrest spread, indicating the severe disruption to daily life and the education sector. A shoot-on-sight curfew was at one point imposed, Further highlighting the gravity of the situation, Hasina's resignation could lead to a power vacuum, resulting in further instability as political factions vie for control. The military's role in this transition will be crucial, and there's uncertainty about whether they will support a democratic process or establish a more authoritarian regime. Discussions around forming an interim government suggest a potential path toward restoring order, but this depends on the cooperation of various political and civil society groups. The interim government's composition and approach will be pivotal in addressing the grievances that led to the protests. The unrest has underscored existing economic challenges, such as high unemployment and corruption, which need urgent attention. Addressing these issues will be vital for any future government to regain public trust and stability.